Hello and welcome to another edition of PAM, our National Seniors Policy, Advocacy and Media electronic newsletter. Well, today I want to talk about ageism. I'm now 65 and like many of you, I've experienced it firsthand. I was barely 50 when I first felt the sting of an ageist comment. It happened at a playground. I was taking our 3-year-old out for the morning while my wife was at home with our newborn. I'd given her a few pushes on the swing and settled back to read the paper on a bench nearby. I told her, push your legs out on the way up, pull them back in, that's it, you can do it. Well, immediately a young mum using the next swing with her child looked up and said, oh, won't your grandpa give you a proper push, darling? Well, I felt like giving her a proper push out of the playground, but I said nothing. The puzzled look on my child's face made me cringe. I wasn't her grandpa, I was her daddy. It was unintentional, but it hurt. So does a grey head of hair really mean you're dead from the neck up and from the waist down? Well, pop stars, actors, TV hosts, even politicians now dye their hair so their fans and voters won't turn off and their careers won't die. Life for females, I'm told, is even worse. They're hit with the double whammy of ageism and sexism. Women tell me if you're over 50 and grey, you become invisible. Sales assistants will stare right through you. Now, if that happens when you're looking for service, can you imagine what it's like if you're looking for work? It's unacceptable and illegal to be racist or sexist, but somehow it's still all right in some circles to be ageist. Well, the federal government recently aroused anger, albeit unintentionally. Josh Frydenberg delivered a landmark speech to the Council for Economic Development of Australia about the economic time bomb of older Australians. He was encouraging workers over the age of 60 to retrain and keep working. Well, immediately we heard stories from our members and others in the community who had retrained but were repeatedly rejected. Some had sent hundreds of applications for jobs without success. Now, the most telling evidence for systemic ageism is the Human Rights Commission survey, where more than 900 HR practitioners revealed their views anonymously. The Age Discrimination Commissioner said up to 30% were reluctant to hire workers over a certain age, and for more than 2/3, that age was over 50. Well, is ageism the last great prejudice? What if we refused to hire people because they were women or because they were from a particular ethnic background or skin colour? Why is having a certain number of years on the biological clock a reason for being targeted for redundancy, voluntary or otherwise? Now, ageism was coined as a term back in 1969 by a US doctor, Robert Butler. He was shocked by the dismissive and often contemptuous attitudes in the medical profession. Well, it's sad to think half a century later, the interim report of the Royal Commission into Aged Care has highlighted ageism as the root cause of neglect and abuse. And if you're a politician watching this, just remember one thing. Every second voter in Australia is now over 50. So if you want their vote, don't do what Bob Hawke did and call someone a silly old bugger, or even go to the modern equivalent of OK Boomer or even old mate or old dear. Well, Josh Frydenberg used his speech to argue for a new dynamic in the way the country is ageing. He said it's going to require new policies to ensure the nation's economy isn't going to be having an ever diminishing number of younger people as taxpayers. But the Treasurer was unintentionally engaging in ageism himself because he was portraying older Australians as a burden. Now, we've heard this before in descriptions like tidal wave of ageism or a tsunami. Well, rather than stigmatise older Australians, we should blame the previous Treasurers from 1980 who have watched all this happen. So let's deal with the facts. Older Australians are wanting to work. They want to work longer, and there are more of them that want to have jobs. But they are not getting the work they need. And when they do retrain, we know they're experiencing discrimination. Training and retraining costs money. And despite the government offering incentives of $10,000 to employers who take on the over 60s, the largest cohort on New Start is still the over 55s. And let's also not forget that many older Australians are caring for other older people and their families, and many of them are volunteers. The second major point the Treasurer needs to address is the fact that the last intergenerational report, back in 2002, got its predictions wrong. Contrary to the view that the pension cost to the nation will grow, the evidence is the opposite. The respected actuarial firm Rice Warner has shown that over time, more and more people are self-funded, and they've got superannuation, and the proportion receiving the pension is falling, not rising. Rice-Water's graph, which you can see here, shows that by 2038, only 56% of eligible people will be receiving the age pension. The cost of the age pension was 2.9% of gross domestic product 20 years ago, but the Intergenerational Report of 2002 projected that it would grow to 4.6% by 2042. In reality, the costs have fallen. Today, the age pension expenditure is around 2.7% of GDP, and it is falling, not rising in the future. You can see from this graph that the expenditure on the pension will fall to 2.5% by 2038. The government needs to address pension poverty and whether the age pension should provide a safety net in retirement or a supplementary level of income for a large proportion of retirees. They shouldn't be saying that we're a burden. The government could also consider areas for reforming the age pension to make it more equitable. Now, Josh Frydenberg has announced that he's going to have a retirement income review, and we are going to be putting your concerns to that review in a submission. And we're going to make sure that you're not seen as a burden. We will continue to fight for fairness and include the latest data that is based on evidence that will show that older Australians are not an increasing burden at all. It's this ageism that in the end leads to abuse and neglect, not respect and concern. National Seniors is out there fighting for you, and we're going to continue to do so right through 2020 and beyond. I'll get out of your way now. Goodbye.